Hello and welcome to Conversations at the Summit. In this episode, we'll be exploring the social impact that businesses can have.
If a business has a group of young people they're hosting for a week or two on work placements, they are always so surprised at the value that that group of young people can add to a business in such a short space of time. They will get a sense of what diverse talent and new perspectives can bring to their business, whether that's giving creative new ideas or challenging processes that are currently in place.
Well, joining us on this episode, we've got Kathryn Eastwood, the Director of Income and Employment Partnerships at the EY Foundation, and my sidekick for a whole host of these podcasts, Gordon Bateman, the man behind Climb. Kathryn, let's start with a nice, easy one for me. What is the EY Foundation?
Yeah, so the EY Foundation is an independent charity. We were set up by EY just over 10 years ago, and our whole focus is social mobility. So we've got quite a punchy ambition in that we want to support all young people on free school meals in the UK to have equitable opportunities in the world of work. And the reason that we have that ambition is because currently the outcomes for those young people are still significantly worse than their better off peers. So we do that in a few different ways. Fundamentally, we've got a series of pre-employability programs where we offer young people who are still in education the chance to have paid employability skills training, paid work experience and professional mentorship. And we also work with businesses to help them access that young talent that they're currently not really reaching out to. And then as well as our core program delivery, we've got a series of other strands of our work that are really focusing on systemic change. Because I mentioned that punchy ambition of supporting 2.1 million young people. To date, we've supported about 25,000 young people through program delivery, and we're so proud of that. And there's a story behind all of those young people. But in order to get to that bigger number, we know that we need to look towards systemic change. So outside of our programs, we're looking at how can we harness emerging technology to drive social mobility in the UK? How can we work even more deeply with employers to really drive behaviour change and support them to be better at social mobility? And also, how can we work with others across our sector and business to drive policy change in this area?
So when you say that chances are that much less, put it into perspective. If you've got a teenager, say, that's on free school meals, by the time they're in their early 20s, what are their prospects?
Yeah, so currently the stat is that if a young person is in receipt of free school meals at the age of 16, they're 3 times more likely to be unemployed at the age of 27. And actually digging a bit deeper into that, if they are employed, they're likely to earn about half of what their better off peers would earn at that time. So, the prospects are not fair at all still. And I think what's actually worse is that we haven't seen progress in the last, few decades.
That scares the life out of me to hear those statistics. Why hasn't it progressed? Why have we not seen progress in recent decades?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, there's so many fundamental aspects to it that we need to take into consideration. Something that we focus a lot on at the foundation is work experience. So, for example, we know that provision of work experience across the UK is so largely dependent on a young person's parents, whether they can offer them work experience, whether the young person can go and shadow them for a day. And it's really about who you know and getting that foot in the door. And that's obviously a vital first step in a young person's career. So one of the things that we're doing at the foundation is to really help more young people, regardless of their background, regardless of what their parents do, to be able to access high quality work experience and those skills and employability experiences through us as well.
Before we talk more about your role, I just wanted to go back in your own story. Where did you start out?
If I think back to why I ended up working at the foundation or where I am today, it's probably one of those stories that I didn't necessarily plan for, but it definitely makes sense looking back, and probably need to go the whole way back. So I left home about 18 years ago, but I hope you can still tell that I'm Irish, from the north to be precise. And I think growing up at the tail end of the Troubles in Northern Ireland, you couldn't help but be interested and aware of all things politics and society. And I think I was acutely aware of all of the social injustice around me. And I do remember from a very young age wanting to be in a job where I could help people, where I could make some kind of difference and really drive fairness. For quite a while, I wanted to be a war correspondent. So I think I traumatized my parents with that for a few years. However, I woke up one day and decided that was not the path for me. So I came to London, went to LSE, and after that, I went into the world of politics through public affairs. So I got a chance to see the behind the scenes and all of the manoeuvring between policy and business. And although so interesting, I knew that wasn't necessarily the area where I was going to be able to make my difference. So I then went into teaching through Teach First. So you may have heard of it, but it's essentially a scheme that throws either graduates or young professionals in at the very deep end of teaching in state schools that are challenged in lots of different ways. And it's funny because I chose not to become a war correspondent, but I genuinely feel like I ended up in the front line. I cannot explain how difficult that whole process was, but it was there that I saw all of the inequalities, all of the injustices, all of the failures of the system that we're all in, and how they impacted young people on a daily basis. So I got to know the young people that we now support at the EY Foundation and started to think about the ways that I could support them better and differently. So after that, I moved to School 21 in East London, which is a really innovative state school. It was set up under the free school policy, and there they were trying to reimagine education and support young people to see the impact that they could have on society from a very young age and how involved they could be in society. And then from School 21, moved to the EY Foundation, and it feels quite full circle because my role there is very much working with businesses to support them to drive social mobility, but ultimately in a way that we can have the biggest impact for those young people that I got to know in the classroom.
So when you're going into those businesses, you have met those children, you've worked with those children, you have tried to help those children. I'm guessing when you're going into businesses, they don't know what you have seen. They don't quite get it. Would that be fair?
I think it completely depends, to be honest. Sometimes, depending on maybe the leadership of that business or the people that I'm working with at the time, they may have had a very similar experience in that they had to go above and beyond. They didn't necessarily have an easy pathway. They didn't have a foot in the door. They didn't have parents who could help them out. So actually, sometimes businesses really get it from a personal point of view. In other cases, we may be working with industries or businesses that are at a completely different starting point, where there's a real lack of representation and a lack of diversity. So for me, it's always trying to meet the business where they are and tie in what it is that we're doing with what they ultimately want to achieve as a business as well.
Gordon, I'm interested, you're in the business world the whole time, day in, day out. Do you sense those different businesses?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I don't know where my story came from, but it's always been a passion of mine about supporting young people from diverse backgrounds, and something that we've embedded into everything we do. But right at the beginning of the journey of owning my own business, it was really daunting. You know, we built a training program, etc., that for a standardized way of bringing people in. So we found it difficult as a small business, how we could engage young people. So it'd be really interesting to hear how that. So I meet a lot of people who have got the right intention, want to bring people, but when it comes to the crunch of actually stepping over the line and doing something, they're actually terrified that they get it wrong and that they might have a negative impact. So it'd be great to hear more about how you can support businesses like mine who want to do that stuff, but maybe feel a bit daunting or a bit intimidating.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even just pulling out what you said there about being a small business, it's not necessarily a one size fits all. And we know that businesses with fewer of their own employees don't necessarily feel like they have the expertise, resource, time, capacity to do something with young people. What I would say is businesses should think about outsourcing things like this to people like us. There's so many incredible providers across our space that will make it so much easier. And like I said, meet the business where they are. So the way that I look at what the EY Foundation does, we will provide a real end-to-end service for businesses in the sense of we've got our programs team who have an extensive network of schools all across England and Scotland that we work with. They work closely with young people, with teachers to really understand that side of the labour market. They understand the challenges faced by young people, their perceptions of certain businesses or roles, their ambitions and the skills that they either think they lack or that they want to gain more of. And then on the other side of things, there's my team that works just as closely with business as we do with young people to understand the drivers and motivations from that business to work with us. So is that they want to develop a diverse talent pipeline? Are they trying to demonstrate their social sustainability? Do they want to engage their own employees in a different way and something meaningful? And what capacity do they have to deliver? And then what we'll do is support them along that journey depending on where they are. So we will bring the young people onto the programs, onboard them, design and deliver large aspects of the programs that we deliver, but also co-design and co-deliver with businesses so they can get involved in our programs and really bring their business or their industry to life. They can be mentors, they can host the work placement, and ultimately we can ensure that the programs that we deliver are mutually beneficial. Obviously, we're trying to support young people, but we want to support business too.
And what do you find with those businesses that really buy into this and they bring these young people in? How does it affect those businesses?
I think even during the shorter programs that we run, if a business has a group of young people that they're hosting for a week or two on work placements, they are always so surprised at the value that group of young people can add to a business in such a short space of time. So they will get a sense of what diverse talent and new perspectives can bring to their business, whether that's giving creative new ideas or challenging processes that are currently in place. So I think it's that real reminder of what diversity of thought can bring to the business.
I was going to say, when you talk about diversity, DEI, it's one of those phrases, isn't it? You hear bandied about diversity, equity and inclusivity. I think a lot of people think of it back in the day, it was bringing, my goodness, there's a woman doing something. Then it's, everybody's white. So maybe disability. I don't think necessarily people think about class. Let's put it at, it's basic thing of societal movement.
Yeah, definitely. And I think DEI can mean predominantly different things in different countries, for example. And you're absolutely right that the class and social mobility is something that I find relatively, it's quite a lot more specific to the UK. I'd say with DEI, there's such a risk of collating so many ideas that don't actually mean the same thing. And we do use it as if it's a word or a definition in itself. But if we break it down, diversity, equity and inclusion, they're three quite different words. They mean quite different things for business.
I looked, because I say, you hear DEI, particularly at the moment, we've heard it a lot, we will get on to that. I thought the E was equality. I have to say, it surprised me that it was equity, not equality.
Yeah, I actually think it maybe used to be equality, and this is a progression of it. But to me, it's so important that we draw out that it is equity and not equality. And that's something that's so close to what we do. You know, I said about our ambition at the start was supporting young people from free school meals backgrounds to have those equitable opportunities. It's recognising that not everybody is at the same starting point. So equality of opportunity isn't enough. We have to go beyond equality and really think about equity. What else is it that we need to put in place so that meritocracy can work? But yeah, I would really urge people to think about what those different words mean, what they mean for business, because the processes and the strategies and the actions that underpin those three words to make a workplace more diverse, more equitable, or more inclusive, they're not the same strategies, and we need to really think about what the term actually means.
It's interesting, Nick. So I work mainly with high growth small businesses. And so I think people in those organisations, again, have a view of what this is.
Yeah.
But then what I really like about what you're doing is the practicality to take someone through a journey, because we are, as business owners, ridiculously busy, running around, and we see this a lot with climate. It's not a talking shop. We all want to do something. We want actions out the back of it, but then you can get lost in the noise.
Yeah.
And how do you help businesses do that? How do you help them get around the three different areas, or do you just focus in one?
Yeah, I think, well, as part of all of our engagement with businesses who come on with us, we always listen to what they're trying to achieve as well. And I think with any of these movements around DEI or programs, measurement and evaluation is so important. So ahead of all of our interventions with young people in business, we'll always undertake surveys with both the young people and the business to get that baseline of where they are. So for example, with young people, it's where they are in terms of their skills, confidence, perceptions of certain industries, etc. And with the business, we'll look at how confident do you feel about accessing diverse talent, about supporting young people into your business, and really get a sense of the baseline and then how that has changed as a result of working with us, but also dig a bit deeper into where they feel like they could do with more support and what it might be that we can help them with as well. But yeah, I think the measurement piece, and it's the same with, you're working so closely with high growth businesses. The things that we want to improve, whether that's profitability or sales, satisfaction in a job, we measure, and it should be the same across all of the things that we're speaking about today as well.
Perfect.
I don't want to turn this into a political podcast by any stretch, but when Donald Trump came out after the crash between the plane and the helicopter, he immediately pointed the finger at DEI. That was the problem. It was unsubstantiated. We won't go down that rabbit hole. But did that change the conversation for you? Do you think that it's going to change the landscape for you going forward? When he's pointing the finger at such, you've got big corporations, Meta, X, they're like getting rid of DEI and ditching that, seeing companies here doing the same. Is it going to make your life more difficult, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting one, and I have been watching it all unfold. So obviously, in his first week or two, he cancelled the federal government's DEI initiatives and committed to saving, I think it was $120 million worth of spending on DEI. What we've seen so far is a variety of responses to that I've seen anyway. So we've had some of the big organisations, like you say, have come out and publicly got rid of their own DEI targets and programmes. But what we've also seen from others is a doubling down and a commitment to DEI, and those who are coming out and really standing by the values that they have been enacting so far. I think for me, this whole argument, you can look at it through the lens of two aspects of the argument. There's the moral side for why we should continue to promote DEI, and that really comes back to what we were saying before about the E, particularly, and obviously I'll answer this through the lens of the EY Foundation, the equity piece. Are we really saying that the least that we can do is ensure that all people have fair access to skills and to jobs, and it's back to those stats about young people from lower income backgrounds just having such a different outcome than their better off peers. So in the moral case, do we not all agree that the least that we can do is offer that equity of access and training? I could speak about the moral case all day. I'm sure it really resonates with lots of people. However, if that isn't enough, and for many it won't be, and that's also fine, the business case for this is so strong as well. There's such a plethora of evidence and reports that show that more diverse workforces are, 60, 70% more productive. We know, and actually I think it's really interesting in the realm of AI, we know that for AI to be used to the capacity that it can be, it needs diversity of thought and perspective and prompt and all of those things. In terms of social mobility, there's a fantastic new report that's come out from Demos and the Co-op Group that shows that if we were to, in the UK, to focus on social mobility, that could add £19 billion to UK GDP per year. So the business case for driving DEI, driving social mobility is so clear. So I don't mind which one you choose. If the moral case is enough for you, fantastic. If it's not, the business case is so strong that it feels like an absolute no-brainer for us to continue to push this.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I have both arguments or both conversations with clients. My core business is around talent and HR and people, and exactly that. And I was thinking about, when I said earlier I didn't know where my journey came from, I think part of it is when I was running big teams, those diverse teams invariably outperformed those who were all from the same background. And I think it's because we challenged each other. We weren't afraid to talk to each other about different things. And I really like this, bringing the AI into the situation as well, because if we're training AI models and we train them all in the same way, they'll end up being useless. So 100% agree.
Absolutely. And actually something that we hear so much. So we've obviously got a large alumni network of young people at the foundation that we've supported. We've got our youth advisory board as well, made up of 12 young people across England and Scotland who feed into our strategy and feedback to our board as well. We're constantly hearing from our young people that they want to work for businesses who care about society, who demonstrate their commitment to the environment, who show on their website that they are a good place to work and that they stand by their values. So not only does that talent coming through want to work for a purposeful organisation, but we also know that investors want to invest in organisations that are demonstrating that they are living their ESG commitments too.
And if you even look at attrition rates of people stay in organisations for a lot longer where those organisations are genuinely committed to this. Yeah. And the cost of recruitment and the cost of retention are miles apart. So even if you just look at that one aspect, 100% backs it up.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you think there's a disconnect from some of the people at the top, be it politics, be it top of businesses, and those are young people that you're talking about, those young, ambitious people who want all of those social things?
I think, what we've heard from our employers, so regularly as part of that work I mentioned earlier about trying to understand how we can support employers better to drive social mobility, we'll often bring our network together, host roundtables, have discussions about live challenges within their business. And something that we hear time and time again is that if initiatives underpinning DEI, social mobility, aren't embedded in core business functions, then it often falls to one person with a real passion for it. And if that person moves along, or if they don't happen to sit in senior leadership, then it's so difficult to drive the agenda. So I think that when there isn't somebody in senior leadership who either believes this personally or sees the business value, then it can be very hard to to push these things forward. That's actually why I love when through our programs, there's, one of the things that we do on our Employability Skills Week is a Dragon's Den style challenge. And you've maybe been involved in one, have you, Gordon?
Once, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we bring business leaders in from the organisations that we're working with to come along and to judge the presentations and the pitches from our young people. And you can just see in the space of a couple of hours how it's like the penny drops, and they are always blown away by the talent. They love to see the story of the young people, and you can just feel the empathy in the room. And I think it can be quite easy to really stoke that empathy. It's just making sure that then translates into actual, tangible, measurable, accountable business action.
And when you talked about the short programs, the 1-2 weeks, and you talked about the businesses seeing it, what do you see in those young people after a week, 2 weeks? Because it can be a great experience when it's there, but when they go back, to where they've come from, do they still feel that they can get to that place? Or does it feel like they had a taste of it, but you've got to persuade them that they can keep going and keep going forward with that?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So I absolutely love seeing the journey of the young people from day one in the program through to the graduation, which is at the end of the second week. And it's honestly hard to put into words what the change is like, and it's across the board. So we'll tend to see young people, they may most likely will not have done anything like it before. They won't necessarily be used to meeting and networking with young people they haven't met. So they're quite shy, head down, quite quiet in the first day. And then by the end of the second week, we wrap up the first part of the programs with the graduation. And the students they host the graduation. They're speaking on panels about their experience. Their whole personality has come out. And like you said, they have had the experience where not only have they gained those really tangible employability skills and the presenting and teamwork and innovative thinking and all of those things. They've been in a workplace and they have felt like they absolutely deserve to be there, and that's a huge part of the program, as well as gaining those technical skills and everything else. In order to keep that going, our work with young people doesn't end there. So after the program, we have mentoring. So those young people will meet with their professional mentor once a month after the program. And again, it's that touch point of reference. It's that adult in their life who can support them through their final year of school and ensure that they're continuing to build that confidence. But then outside of that, they're in our alumni network as well. So we're always running events and trying to continue to support those young people long after the program, because it's exactly like you said, Tanya, we don't want it to be a little taster of what could be, but then just go back to everyday life. It's a reminder of who they are, just how much they're capable of, and just how worthy they are to be in the buildings that we're all in as well.
It's interesting. And going back to the change, I always think it's great if you could video people when they come in. You obviously can't, and then video them when they leave, because it is almost like and in such a short space of time. Yeah. One of the things that came out of Climb last year is that there was a group of people who'd gone through a traditional education doing a Dragon's Den type engagement, and a bunch of young people from diverse backgrounds. And the feedback from the investors, and this is venture capital community, was that the young people were much more engaging, and the conversations were much more beneficial. And they felt more investable, not as the businesses, but as people, than the people who had been prepared by a business school going into that environment. So I think it is, in such a short space of time, the difference you can make is phenomenal. And that ongoing engagement is critical, because you could just get lost back in the system, couldn't you? So I think, I agree 100%.
And actually what you're saying about those young people being more engaging, I think, we actually talk quite a lot at the moment about intergenerational collaboration in the workforce. So it's the first time we've got 5 generations in the same offices, in the same workplace, and the types of skills and attributes and qualities that those young people can bring that that we can't necessarily bring, the way that they have been brought up in a much more digital world, that they think differently, they have different expectations of the workplace and their colleagues, they're entrepreneurial, they're driven. And actually, something that I'm constantly reminded of, teenagers are so brutally honest. If you want to get feedback on a business idea, you will get it from a 17-year-old, and there will be no punches spared. And it's incredible to see. I'm sure you've seen it in the VC community too.
You can tell he has the look on his face.
Yeah.
And I've got an idea now. I come up with mad ideas, and the operations team behind the camera are going to go mad. But what we should do is do a reverse pitch then. We should bring some young people from your programs in, and some of the entrepreneurs who are coming to Climb, and let them get that brutal feedback from that. We should 100%, now, we're going to make that happen at Climb. We should 100% do that.
Definitely. And honestly, I've seen it in so many cases where, like I said, about that value add, even just in those few days, there have been several cases of where a young person or a group of young people have changed a fundamental part of a business, whether that's a marketing campaign or an internal strategy, that their feedback is so valued and it's used.
Absolutely.
So you gave us an idea of going forward, that there were 2.1 million people in that bracket that need the help. You've managed to help 25,000.
Yeah.
How do you bridge that gap? What is the plan going forward to bridge that gap?
Yeah, so, well, I wish I had the
absolute
answer. Yeah, so definitely continue to watch this space. But there's 3 or 4 new strands to our work that are going to be vital. It's really looking towards systemic change. And I think, firstly, just to lay out the ethos of the EY Foundation, for us, it's very much around collaboration, convening employers, convening people across the sector. There's so many fantastic organisations across our sector doing amazing things. We want to work really closely with them. An area that we're doing quite a lot of work in and thinking in is emerging technology. We've already talked about it a couple of times. You cannot avoid AI. It's everywhere. And in order to make those big changes and access and impact so many more people, we know that harnessing emerging technology will underpin that. So just to give you a couple of examples, we've recently published our AI and social mobility report, which builds upon the government's recommendations to really embed our recommendations for young people being central to the design of AI strategy and to ensure that their voices are heard so that they're able to access these technologies and get the most out of them as well. We're doing a further piece of work around the intrinsic motivation that underpins that, because something that we've found is that there's the physical access to emerging technology, but we've heard often from our young people that they don't necessarily think it's for people like them, in inverted commas. So it's really ensuring that there's a behavioural shift underpinning that as well. So we're working with some partners, including the Institute for the Future of Work, to ensure that our young people really feel that it is for people like them. And in fact, progress in AI in the UK relies on wonderful, talented people like them. So that's some of the work that we're doing in emerging technology. In terms of policy change, we've already been working on feeding into local skills improvement plans, for example, and staying close to the government's plans and trying to understand where there are policies that we can work with others in our space to influence. And I mentioned right back at the beginning the importance of work experience. One of our other initiatives currently is a place-based focus on work experience. So the actual structure and concept of work experience hasn't changed in the past 50 years. It didn't necessarily work then, and it still doesn't really work now. The access, there's such a disparity in access and in quality. So we're doing a place-based focus in Bradford, and we're working with schools, with other providers in the area, with the Chamber of Commerce, local councillors and politicians and businesses to really think about how we can dismantle and redesign work experience that actually works and is accessible to all. So those are a few of the things that we're doing, but it really it really is building upon everything that we learn from programs, because that keeps us so close to young people, to employers, helps us gather those data insights and the evidence that we need. But then really bringing that up a few levels to the systemic piece so we can make real change.
And I think when these programs are amazing and seen them firsthand, so of course I'm going to say that, and that's why we're here. But a lot of smaller businesses, how can they get involved? Where's the best way to find out more about what you're doing in Bradford, etc., and how can they get involved? Because I love this idea that you can outsource this to your organisation, because that's what small organisations need. So how can they connect better and get involved in these programs?
Yeah, so firstly, get to the EY Foundation website. There's a host of ways to contact us to get involved. But the way that we work with employers is along a spectrum. It can go from a full-on big partnership where we design bespoke programs really tailored to that specific business and their industry, their objectives and the locations that they work on, right through to volunteering opportunities that are really easy to be involved, accessible for businesses of all sizes, and outside of those direct program deliveries as well. As I mentioned before, we're always hosting events, we're sharing resources, we're listening to businesses about what their challenges are, and we're thinking about ways that we can support them more. We actually have another piece of research that we're working on, which looks specifically at the challenges faced by SMEs with regards to driving social mobility, because we're so aware that it is not easy, and we know how busy smaller businesses can be, and often if something like this, if there isn't a dedicated person to do this, which I'm sure in many small businesses there isn't, then it can end up being a side of desk commitment and really difficult to do. Whereas with us, we can provide support for that. We can train employees to deliver work experience, to mentor and all of those things. So I'd say get in touch with us, because there's a host of ways that you can be directly involved in our work, but in a way that also supports the business longer term as well.
Before we let you go, can you just give us a story of one of those young people, one of those 25,000 that you've helped? You don't need to name names in terms of process, but just be lovely to get a real sense of that journey that they've been on.
Yeah. Okay. I could name hundreds. Right. I'm going to speak about Huma, and I know she won't mind me saying her name. Huma is a young woman from Manchester who first got involved in what we call our Tech Futures program when she was 17, so a few years ago. And Tech Futures is an industry-focused version of our employability programs. So we work with about 350 employers a year. We have about 12 industry-specific programs. The Tech Futures program takes young people who've got a real interest in all things tech and digital, but don't necessarily have that foot in the door, don't know where to start, and then takes them through one of our programs where they gain specific tech employability skills, work experience in a tech company, and then a mentor from the tech and digital space. So Huma went through that program, and she probably was one of those shyer students on the first day, but had that real passion for all things tech and digital. She is now at the Manchester Metropolitan University studying AI and data science, absolutely thriving. And not only is she thriving on that course, but she has also set up a society called Her Tech Future at Manchester Met, which is a platform and network for young women with a passion for AI and data science. And she has also spoken on panels with us. I actually was on a panel with her not that long ago. And I mean, you should never follow a young person on a panel, because it is really hard work. She's so engaging, so passionate about what she does, and has really big ambitions for where she's going. And then outside of that, she also sits on our youth advisory board. So she had the confidence not only to get into that fantastic degree course, to then set up that society, but now to represent young people all across the UK and feed into our strategy too. So she's a fantastic example. And I know that sounds like a real, shiny, polished case study, but there are hundreds of young people like that I could have talked about, but she's wonderful.
And we're all smiling.
Yeah.
On that note, it's been fascinating watching you throughout, that when you're talking specifically about the young people, your face just lights up, and you were smiling all the way through telling us that. Kathryn, thank you so much for your time. Good luck with the work you're doing, because it's really, really important. Join us again for the next time when we have conversations at the summit.